Hi, still getting connected. Give me just a moment to finalize setup here. Make sure I'm connected to the chat. There we go. And we are connected. All right. So, welcome to Monday's Lunar Lunch Break with Evylyn Rose. I am Evylyn Rose, an empowerment guide, tarot reader, former Army medic educator. The list of titles goes on. I'm your stereotypical elder millennial, so you can imagine the full resume is miles long. And during our lunar lunch break sessions, this is all about questions dealing with tarot, modern witchcraft, spirituality in general, um, and also just practical practice within spiritual religious framework. I tend to be very hyper focused on our spiritual health aspect within our holistic well being. I have plenty of both training and work experience and degrees behind the physical, mental, emotional health aspect. But these days, I focus primarily on our spiritual health, and that is a main reason why I do these live streams every week. Um, so, for anybody who is new to any of my live streams, the best way to do this is if you have a question, just drop that question in the chat during the stream at any time while we're still going, and I will make sure that I get these, get your questions answered. I prioritize anything that comes through the chat. Um, However, I do also accept questions ahead of time. So when there's nothing actively in the chat, if there's a little break in there, I will pull from a list of questions that's been compiled for people sending me emails, visiting my website, connecting with me on social, even live in person. Anytime, anywhere you see me, if you have a question, you ask it and you want me to include it in one of our live streams, I'm happy to do that. And I just add it to my list. Um, for those who are new and who've never watched one of my live streams, these Q&A and AMA sessions are geared more towards just straight question answer, um, general discussion about spiritual practices, especially within that tarot, esoteric, occult, mysticism kind of lens. Um, if you're looking for live stream tarot readings, this is not the one. That's not to say that I never participate in those, just this is not my typical, this is not my space for that. Typically I start off these sessions with a little update, something quick, easy, before we jump into the questions. That just gives everybody time to log in, find the stream, get connected. Um, for um, for today, um, I do have a couple questions lined up that I know I'm definitely going to get into. And then again, if you do have questions, just drop them in the chat at any point and I will make sure that they get answered before we wrap up. Let me make sure that I have those questions in front of me. Before I dive into that, while we're waiting to give everybody a chance to get logged in, I do want to share that yesterday here in Newark, Delaware, our little treasure shop, which oh, sorry, we just rebranded yesterday. It's the Little Treasure Shop and Gallery. If you've never been and you're in the area, please check them out. They are amazing and they support all of our local artists, crafters, artisans, the owners. Their income, their revenue is from the spaces being rented by our local crafts, um, art crafters, artisans, artists. So to everything that you buy in the store is 100% proceeds to that local artist and business person. So it doesn't go to the shop, it goes to the artists themselves. So please definitely check them out. We had a fantastic rebranding event yesterday. Tons of people showed up. If you've ever been in there, you know we cram the owners cram the shop like everywhere that they can. They try to fill the space, which means you have tons of people kind of weaving in and out. But it still remained absolutely beautiful, wonderful. Nobody got stuck. Nobody broke anything. There was food. There was live music, which was fantastic. my tarot reading corner was set up like in a room over from our musician. And I definitely made sure to have his stuff here. So his name is Khayden Saxman. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. I keep forgetting that my camera does not like to zoom in on those. I'll make sure that it ends up in our show notes. So he does play live music, but in addition, he does these sax and sip events where he'll play the sax music, but he also does custom tea blends. So right now I'm actually about to enjoy my first cup of the tea blend he made for me, which was white peony peony white tea, chamomile and lavender is what we ended up putting together. And so you'll see me sip on that. So if I have a random reaction on my face, it's just because, ooh, it's great. But no, so he's absolutely wonderful. Prices are fantastic. So if you're one of those struggling financially, he makes sure that you can handle it. He does scaled pricing on his teas because everybody should be able to enjoy good, high quality herbal teas. So definitely make sure to check him out. I'll put that info in my show notes since I'm giving him a shout out in this today. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the questions because our lunar lunch break sessions are only 30 minutes. We started a few minutes late today, so I will go ahead and I'll probably go over by a couple minutes to kind of help balance that out. I had a little bit of a squirrel brain moment where I was like, ooh, I've got 3 minutes. And then I read a thing, and then the next thing I knew, it was 2 minutes late. So I will try to not be squirrel brained about the time when we're that close to the start time. All right, so our questions for today. There were 3 questions in particular that I kind of want to address them simultaneously all together and then kind of go back and like answer them one at a time. Because they're all kind of in that same vein of questioning, where there's questions that the answers to these questions are very similar in some respects, but then there's some nuance for each individual question. So I'm going to first start off with all 3 questions, kind of give some general guidance, and then I'm going to go back and address them one at a time. Okay, so the 3 questions that came up that I absolutely loved all these questions. So what should beginners ignore when too many rules are being shared? So think like you talk to one person with however many years of experience and they say, oh, here's the do's and the don'ts. And then they talk to another person, similar expertise, similar background, similar everything. And then their do's and don'ts like don't always match, right? Or they have additional ones. The next thing you know, you're a new person, you're trying to learn the ropes, and you've got a do's and don't list that like started off this long and is now this long, and you're still just trying to figure out which book to pick up that you know is safe to read and is exactly what you're looking for, right? Um, okay, so what should you ignore when there's too many rules that are being shared with you? The second question that's kind of in the same similar vein is like, how do I keep my practice personal when social media makes everything feel performative? Um, Anybody who has knows me has ever gotten into the topic of things like this. Performative actions, I don't handle them very well. I'm pretty good about biting my lip in the moment when I see it, but that doesn't necessarily, just out of just kind of general manners. But I also don't tend to deal with it very well privately and personally. Um, and then how do I keep a spiritual practice grounded when the internet is full of conflicting advice? So again, that last question ties on into exactly why I decided to do these Q&A and AMA sessions is because the internet is so full of conflicting advice. It's why I've kept messages in the moonlight going for, what is this, 2026, so 23 or more years now. It's precursors, a couple years older than that. So a little more than, so somewhere ballpark 25-ish years. And then it's why I do a lot of the work that I do within my business. A lot of my courses are designed to address the stereotypes and misconceptions, the biases. And so the internet is so full of conflicting advice. And when it comes to matters of spirituality, you are supposed to have your practice grounded. It is supposed to be something that helps to ground you. It's supposed to be something that lifts you up. And how are you supposed to do that if you go online and there's so much advice out there that's like, I don't even know how to put this together in a way that will ground me. Like you get more overwhelmed or you get more anxiety about getting started, and then you don't start, which is in itself a problem, right? If you're trying to address our spiritual health and well-being. Okay, so the reason I wanted to put all these questions out there up front was, and you know what, I think what I might do, let me go ahead. I'm just going to copy and paste these questions off my list and pop them into the chat because I want you guys to, for those of you who are here live, I do want to make sure that you can actually see those questions so you understand what I'm what I'm going on and on and on about and why I keep going back to them. All right, so the thing that all of these have in common is that information, when it gets put out there, when it gets shared, not all of it is accurate, not all of it is right. When people share information, the intentions behind their sharing are not always accurate. Um, or excuse me, their intentions are not always, they're not always the intentions that align with what you hope their intentions will be as somebody who's seeking answers to your questions. I'm trying to find my nice tactful way of wording it. Feel free to read between the lines. It's okay. And it's on that point of being performative. Like, how can you tell, like, so you have people who are like me that are awkward on camera, so we have different ways of how we behave when we're on a video, when we're putting ourselves out into public in any way, whether we're standing live behind a podium or microphone, or we're, you know, typing away at our computer sharing information. So sometimes it's a matter of, it just comes across as performative without actually being such. And then other times it's, yeah, this is the persona or the what's that other word that people use? Um nope, it's not coming to me right now. I'll swing back around to that word if it comes up. And but the idea is they have developed that public face within that setting. For them is the internet. And so everything they say and do has to fit within that persona that they have gotten. As part of why, particularly if you are into any sort of business, if you have any sort of like art or creations or music or anything that you are trying to share, like you have to market that. And a lot of modern day marketing practices really push for like, try to be authentic. Always ask yourself, is this authentically me? Because if it's not, then you find yourself having to become performative even when you don't intend to be. So it's not always necessarily is performative just to be performative. Those are the ones that get to me. But sometimes it's just we kind of put ourselves into that bubble and then we don't know how to break out of it. Um, and for those of us who are seekers, who are trying to learn, that does make it so hard to break out of. Um, and then the advice being conflicting, it's because we're so different. We have different worldviews. We've grown across the world. We're growing up with different values, different ways of acting and behaving and seeing the world. And so, no two people talking about the exact same thing with the exact same education and background are going to explain things the same way. It's just not going to happen because it's so different. Um, and then we bring in issues like trying to find my nice ways of wording things because I'm trying to consider the people that would this would relate to the most. I don't think are going to be watching my streams. Um, that said, I do want to be mindful. I don't like naming names. It's a just professional courtesy that I have grown up with, and I actually like and prefer because it's come have a conversation with me one on one, just like you would in any workplace setting, right? Same thing in the classroom. Like that's the number one complaint about calling out a student in the middle of class for behaviors. Like they might have reacted a little differently if you pulled them aside first, right? So have those one-on-one conversations for the stuff I'm about to talk about next, which is that stuff that's not necessarily performative specifically, but part of why it's conflicting or why there's so many different rules out there, and trying to narrow down, okay, what are the priorities here? What are the actual boundaries that we need to respect? And a lot of this stems from the trends that we now have in our societies, and this is a global phenomenon. It's not just here in the U.S. It's not just here in the Americas. It's in all parts of the world. Trying to decolonize, trying to differentiate between a cultural exchange versus a cultural appropriation. Um, we see it all the time. I have been asked to take part in rituals publicly, and the things that they're asking me to do, I'm like, I don't, something about this doesn't feel right for me. And when I go and I do my research, I'm like, oh, they simply are trying to take this concept from this one living tradition, kind of force model it into something that is a current trendy, let's be inclusive thing. And then completely, in doing that, completely disrespects that living tradition, completely misses the concept entirely, making it into something it's not. So sometimes it can be as simple as just we were taught the words wrong. Like, we, for many years, referred to various smoke cleansing practices, or practices that involved clearing energy, or addressing our spiritual health using burning herbs, and we would refer to that as smudging. Some people still call it smudging today because it takes time when you've learned that language and to use it that kind of way for so long. It takes us time to break out of those habits. And so I do still see it pop up every now and again. I go back through stuff I put on Messages in the Moonlight or in social online forum spaces years and years ago, and I'm like, ooh, wow, I didn't edit that out yet. So sometimes it's just there because it's been there so long, and then other times they're still talking in this way because that habit hasn't been broken yet. So no matter, screaming at them doesn't help. Like that, embarrassing people does not help. That just makes the ego reinforce the negative behavior. So if you want people to change, don't yell at them. Just kind of like point out, like, that might not be the way to do it. Or, hey, that concept from that faith isn't a goddess in your neo-pagan pantheon. Like, that's not what that is. That is a completely different thing that's not even an entity at all. And trying to explain that can be difficult in the moment. So always go in, assume the best when you come across that. But again, I'm kind of getting away from the point. The point coming back to, you're a beginner and or you're new to this particular practice or tradition and you're trying to understand it. Like, what can you do there? So of course, my first and foremost advice, and I'll make sure to include some resources and show notes to help start you on that journey if that's something you're interested in. There's some people doing some amazing work in these fields. Find, first of all, trust that intuition. If it feels wrong, that's usually the indicator of, oh, let me look into this a little more. Put on the critical thinking hat, do some research. Yes, it takes a while. I think one of these days I'm going to need to like do a blog post that's literally me just like copy pasting my like thinking and researching process, so you can see like the weird stuff that will come out of my brain at like 10 o'clock at night, and like just how in depth and detailed and complex that research can get. It doesn't mean you should start that way. I was young and starting on these topics long ago, and I promise you it was not that complex back then. But it can get complex. And so I the best thing is, don't waste your time listening to things that like it in your gut feels wrong. Um, that's when we want to fact check. That's when we want to dig into it. That doesn't mean go talk to the cynic. We've talked about cynics before in my live streams, and I talk about them in my blog posts. We don't want to go the cynical route, but it's okay to go the skeptical route. It's okay to question. And I want you to question when there are too many rules. That said, I'm going to put on the educator hat and the mom hat. Um, Rules exist for a reason. So if there are rules, by all means, you can ask, hey, why is this a rule? And that also helps to discern between, okay, this is a hard and fast, I need to prioritize this rule, or it's good advice to follow and I should maybe listen until I get further along on my path and decide for myself whether or not to keep it. And then there's the other hand of just like, this feels antiquated and we can let it go. Okay. um, okay, so that kind of covers them more broadly. That covers all three questions. Real quick, I'm just going to go back through and just answer each question. Again, if you do have a question while I'm knocking out these three, please pop them in the chat so I can make sure that I address them before I wrap up today. All right, so to go back through and tackle these one question at a time. So what should beginners ignore when too many rules are being shared? So obviously anything that sounds or feels discriminatory in any way, anything that sounds like, wow, that does not apply to the modern world. So think like when, for a good example would be Wicca's earlier days. Wicca's still a relatively new religion, um, and in the efforts to make it sound more ancient to add credibility, because a lot of times you come out and you say, hey, there's this new religion that's steeped in ancient practices and esoteric traditions, and a lot of people are going to be like, no thank you, just because they heard new. A lot of times with religion there and spiritual practices, we expect them to be ancient, or we demand that they be ancient, and it's like, well, there is power in the stuff that is ancient, but there also is stuff that was of that time and is not of that time now. We are not in those days anymore. So in that example with Wicca, they had the idea of ordains or laws, and a lot of those. I think the most common one you can find are like the 161 laws, which I believe came out of Gardnerian tradition, and some of those are talking. They're clearly designed to be, if you're dealing with persecution where you could be hung, stoned, burned, pick a thing, for your path, if you were doing those same things in those times, then it would make total sense for those to be laws of that faith. But today, and depending on where you are in the world and the culture that you're living in, those rules make absolutely no sense. So the things to ignore are those things that don't make sense today. Like, it's okay to let this rule go. If it sounds like it's just somebody projecting their own insecurities, let it go. If it sounds like something that is designed to keep you or others small or insignificant in some way, if it sounds like something that's made to make um, a group, particularly a minority group, um, stay a minority group at all costs, those are examples of rules to just outright ignore. Let those go. Okay. For the second question, how do I keep my personal practice, or how do I keep my practice personal when social media makes everything feel performative? So I know one of the upcoming mini courses that I have on the back, well, it's not really on the back burner, but behind the scenes is probably the better way to word it, is about the witches pyramid. It's been called other things, which I'll cover more as I kind of get started on that project. Um, but a lot of personal practice, the reason I bring that up is because for magical practitioners specifically, there's a strong foundation that's required for any effective magical work. Um, and one of the components of that foundation is this idea of keeping silent. Okay, which means don't talk about it. Don't keep talking about it. Don't keep thinking about it. Don't keep ruminating about it. Don't share all the details. Like, it drives me nuts watching modern day practitioners, and this kind of goes into that performative piece where, like, they just did this big amazing spell and they're telling you all the details, who they invoked or what they invoked, what it supplies they use, what's decorating the candle right now, words they use. Like, they're giving you all the details, and they're taking pictures or videos and then they post it publicly for everyone in the world to see it. And all my brain goes like, oh my God, like you just derailed your own work. Because unless every single person who sees that is going to invest positive energy toward it to support it, you've basically just null and voided everything you just did. But again, I'll explain that more when I get that course up and coming. We'll talk a little more on that specifically. But those are the moments where it does feel performative. Like if you were really serious about this, should you really be giving all the details? Should you be sharing everything that you did or plan to do? Um, that does come across as performative, again, whether or not the intention was in a good place or not. Um, so keeping your practice personal is something I honestly support. You do not have to label everything. I have met people where they have been practicing witches for all of, I joke all of 5 minutes, but like we're talking within, they're still within like they're still in that first decade, right? So they're anywhere between like a year or two to like 5 years in, and they're like using all these specialized labels for their path. And I'm just like, how do you know this about yourself already? Because any of us who have been practicing for decades, like, and we look at the evolution of our paths, whether it was within a religious framework or separately as just a witchcraft, generally speaking, um, it goes through stages, it goes through phases, and it's over time that we find the language that really truly fits what what it is we are and represent. And so you don't have to use labels. If you are using labels, you don't have to make them, you don't have to blast them on all your social profile bios. You don't have to mention it every time you hop into a chat room or um, commenting on social media posts. You don't have to put that out there. Um, so as far as how to keep it personal is just focus on you. Just do you. Remember that social media, things on the internet, it's the internet. That is one space, one facet of society and the lived human experience. And it's one that's new to the human experience. It is not very old. I remember pre social media days, and the internet was a very different place back then. Um, that said, a lot of what we see in social media is still some of the same, just more of the same, but it's also drastically different from what it used to be. So it's okay to turn it off. It's okay to, I love the saying, touch grass, right? Like take time, turn off the social media and do your practice. Okay. Um, so again, how to keep it personal is just focus on you. Don't let it shift and change as it needs to over time. It's okay to question. It's okay to ignore and don't feel pressured to do all the things that other people are doing online and on social media. Okay. And then that third question, answering individually, how do I keep a spiritual practice grounded when the internet is full of conflicting advice? So, it's very similar to keeping your practice personal. With this one, it's less about the like privacy aspect, or that witch's pyramid keep silent aspect. It's more about kind of finding, establishing, and maintaining your spiritual practice, and making sure that don't let things that other people say dig that deep. It doesn't mean that if somebody's calling you out on something, so like my earlier example of like with smudging, if somebody's saying like, please stop calling it that, um, or here's a more appropriate way of using that. Like that's one thing. That is part of allowing your personal practice to shift and to grow and to evolve. And that is healthy for us. Religion and spirituality, when it stagnates, is no longer healthy. Like that is when it becomes performative, as in going through the motions. Like you're doing it just because that's what you're supposed to be doing. Um, that is not what you want in with true spiritual practice. That said, there may be some aspects of your practice that are like daily, this is what I need, and then life happens, things change, and then you find a new set of routines that you go through. And then years later, you revisit those earlier practices you had and you reincorporate them in. So it's okay to let a spiritual practice go. It's okay to try out different spiritual practices to incorporate. Um, but make sure that we're not just doing it because somebody said to do that thing, or somebody tells you you're not supposed to do a thing. Like I know a common thing that comes up, people talk about use of like chakras, and then you get me with auras, and I'm that little naysayer because I do not possess that psychic sights where I can visualize actual colors and things of that nature. Some people have that talent. It exists, it's real. But I will be the first person to call out the BS when you open up a book on auras and the first like 5 chapters of a book are all about having you placing objects and color paper behind it and staring unblinkingly for several minutes or more at a time and then removing the paper. It's like that is literally just retina burn. Like I am the first person to call that out, right? And that's an example of conflicting advice. Like that's not helpful, right? So those of us who know that that advice is not helpful are going to call that out. So now you have 2 pieces of conflicting advice. Well, how do you know what is real? That's when you go researching. It's like, oh, well, she just mentioned retina burn. What is that? And you'll probably come across some Psych 101 visual, what do they call that? Yeah, is that visual? I want to say visual illusions, right? Um, and yeah, it's a phenomenon studied in our biological psychology. Like this is how our brains and our bodies work and how vision works, right? That's just one example. But these simultaneously, again, that concept of auras, the adapting the model of the chakra system. It became a way, well, there's definitely some clear cut cases of cultural appropriation in that regard. This is one of those areas where you get an example of cultural exchange versus cultural appropriation. Like when you are taking it out of context and trying to change it into something it's not is one thing. But then if you are using it to help support a different system that does not have this language, it does not have a compatible or similar model to help explain these things that are very real spiritual experiences for people, that's where we start getting into a cultural exchange situation. Chakras in particular are absolutely um, fun conversations that I have when I speak to friends of mine who are from India, who are active Hindu practitioners and who are yogic practitioners or teachers. Um, and we get into the topic of chakras, and they'll say something or I'll say something, and like out comes the American English version and explanation, and then we're basically comparing notes like, okay, well, here's what the actual ancient teachings, here's the name, here's the purpose, here's the why, and then seeing like, oh, okay, there is compatibility here, but we have now created our own terms for it. So it's one of those weird areas where, depending on exactly what's being said and where, you're dealing with an exchange or an appropriation. But that does mean you will get conflicting advice over something like just this one singular aspect of a spiritual practice. So to keep your spiritual practice grounded, again, learn, study, sit with it. What is most meaningful for you? There's such a wide variety of spiritual practices. It is hard to narrow down. So if you have a particular spiritual practice that you're struggling with keeping grounded, because there's so much conflicting advice going on right now, or just in general for years, please reach out. Let me know, and I'm more than happy to tackle that and go deeper into this question because I would love to have some specific examples. Now, of course, we did start the session late, so I did want to let it run a little over. But I think I did not even get to my other questions I had lined up. But that happens, and that's okay. So we'll address that. Let me mark that to make sure I don't forget to address that one next time. Okay, there we go. So we ended up spending the whole session working on just these 3 questions, but that's fine. I knew they were going to be loaded questions collectively. Um, I don't see any questions in the chat. If you are tuning in and a question does come up, because I know we're at the end now, send me an email. If you're on Twitch, I have on my channel about page, there's a little, what you call it, a suggestion box. There you go. You can pop a question in there. If you don't want it to be seen by other people, then just email me directly, or like if you see me on social media, just say hi and ask your question. I'm happy to tackle it. And again, if you have any specific aspects or questions about anything that I talked about today, please, please, please definitely send me those questions so that I can address them. All right. So let me give you guys a couple of updates real quick before I close out. Okay. Obviously, I always want to tell you about the Starlight Circle. That is my email newsletter. I only send it once a month because the email inbox overwhelm is huge. I spend most of my day unsubscribing from emails, which means that it takes me that much longer to address the emails that I actually need to be responding to. And so I only send it once a month, and that's mainly just so that you can get whatever the major updates are, and if I'm offering any specials or exclusive um, subscriber content and things of that nature, I want to make sure you don't miss out. So I only send that once a month. So please sign up for that, become one of my moonbeams, reflecting that starlight out into the world. My live streams, again, we have our lunar lunch break Q&A, which is a 30-minute session, a little quicker, faster. Then we have our clearing conversations Saturdays at 5 p.m. Eastern here in the US. The best way to submit questions are live on the air because that's when I will prioritize them. However, if you are more comfortable asking the question privately, then just send it to me through email. If you see me in person or on social, those are the best ways to let me know so that I can get that question answered. And I will definitely keep you anonymous. I do not share names of where these questions come from for that reason. Website links, instead of listing them all out, I'm just going to say you can find all the links to my websites in the show notes. I'm also going to include show notes for any of these other things. Oh, speaking of, it's delicious. I will also make sure that you get Khayden Saxman's links in. I have his info right here with me. I'm going to make sure as soon as I wrap this up that I update the show notes with those links to his stuff as well. Socials, you can find me on Blue Skies where I'm most active. If you're a fellow business owner, professional, networking, things like that, I'm on LinkedIn and Alignable. If you're watching this right now, then you already know that I'm on Twitch and YouTube. And that's where I post my videos. YouTube is where you'll find the permanent videos, whereas Twitch is just they only keep it for like a week, I think. So all right, that's our time for today. So thank you again for spending so much time with me, spending your lunch break here on this Monday. If you have any questions that I didn't get to, please again share them with me so that I can address them on our next stream. Our next live stream is Saturday, this coming Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern. If anything changes, I'll post an update on my YouTube channel profile. Until then, just stay curious, subscribe to the